Hi students, Mr. C here. Well, we're getting to the final steps of this project, and what we're going to do today, what I'm going to demonstrate for you is pouring the epoxy on for the final layer of the top. Now just to kind of recap real quick what's happened. With the top, we panel sanded or wide belt sanded the top to make it completely flat. After that, I used a air-driven Merca sander and I sanded the top with 80 grit, 100, 120, 150, 180, and 220 grit. Then I did 320 grit. After I was done with that, I went ahead and I put a very thin layer of epoxy over the surface, so that way it could seep into the pores. I did that, then I sanded it back with 220 and 320. I waited 48 hours, I layered it again with another thin layer of epoxy, just clear. Waited for that to dry, and then I sanded that completely flat again with 320 grit. So now we have the top is all ready for the top coat of epoxy resin to be poured in. Now I've mixed this, and actually I can feel the bottom of the buckets get a little bit warm, so I know that I have a good chemical reaction happening here. But to prep this, I also wiped down all the surfaces with a mineral spirit, and I let that dry. And I also took this tape. I used a frog tape or a painter's tape first. Then I wrapped it all the way around, overlapped the seam by 4 inches. Then I put a second layer of masking tape around it, just a regular 3M masking tape that you see everywhere. That's to prevent it from sliding down or running all over the place, because epoxy is pretty runny. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and keep all of the epoxy on the top surface. One thing I did do before this is I leveled out this top on this bench top. This bench top is not completely flat, but what I had to do is I shimmed underneath the table this top to make this completely flat, level. So that way, when the epoxy is in here and it runs, it does not run off to one side and create a thick end on one end or the other. So that way we get a nice even layering of the epoxy, okay? So that being said, I want to go ahead and show this to you. So the top is pretty ready. So I have the tape on here running along the whole thing. And you're going to see this grain in here. I'm patiently waiting to get the top coat on here because this is all curly in here and it's pretty spectacular. Like you can kind of see on the side here how that curl happened. Obviously the tape is in the way. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead, I have my heat gun here, and we're gonna go ahead and pour this epoxy on the surface to get ourselves a nice, even thin layer on here. I do have a foam brush here just to kind of move this around, and I want to show you how the epoxy really brings out the luster of the top here. Now this will self-level significantly. Just kind of pushing this around. I accidentally went over my own edge. Okay. Now remember, one of you guys is going to win this, so make sure you enter as many times as you can. Give yourself the best opportunity to win this. This top is spectacular. I'm going to show you the top again as soon as I get full coverage. And of course we'll have to use the heat gun again. Now, like I said before, there's going to be some bubbles. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to show you this real quick. This is going to sit, I'm going to let this sit for 24 hours. Not touch it, let it level out. It will self-level. But I think that like certain areas like this are just incredible. And I will show you a side view later once it's all polished. And you'll see that there's a layering of the different epoxies. But you don't see the layers in line, but you see it because of